This is the Morning Drive at Mira Business FM. Next up, the need-to-know technicalities of UAE tax compliance with, I guess, the strategic urgency of the 2026 Small Business Relief Deadline, which is coming up at the end of the year. So this is kind of everything you ever wanted to know about tax as an SME in the UAE, but maybe you were afraid to ask. I'm not sure. Scott Cairns joins me. He's the Managing Director, the founder of Creation Business Consultants here in the studio. Good to see you, Scott.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here. I guess we start. Let's start at the absolute basics. So the UAE for years has been seen as a bit of a haven, a tax-free haven, really. In these days, SMEs are navigating VAT, corporate tax, e-invoicing mandates, lots of stuff going on. So if you're an SME owner or thinking of becoming an SME owner, and you're listening or watching now, what's the mindset you need to have in the middle of 2026? How do you need to be thinking tax-wise?
I think people need to get away from the way they used to think of the Middle East and Dubai, which was a bit of the Wild West, tax-free, anything goes. Yeah. I think that sort of went away towards well before 2020. We started to get more sophisticated. We had VAT coming in 2018, and more compliance and regulation has come through the sort of pipeline. And now businesses need to understand that it's a regulated business jurisdiction like anywhere else. It does have favourable tax system, but it's still something that needs to be complied with. And getting it wrong can be a little bit painful for some people. No,
that's right. And ignorance is no excuse, of course. The importance of strategic planning I want to get to, and I want to get into a little bit more detail, but let's just start with the basics. So people talk about the corporate tax rate, 9%. There you go. That's what it is. And as you say, favourable compared to lots of other jurisdictions. But that's not a flat fee for everyone, is it? There are nuances there that we need to sort of delve into.
Yeah, there are. As you mentioned earlier, the small business relief. So if your turnover is below 3 million dirham when you lodge a tax return, you can actually get relief and you can get zero corporate tax on that.
Right.
So but you must do that election when you lodge the tax return. And it must be done each year. So if you did it last year, you would need to do it this year. And that is at the moment, that SBR does expire at the end of this year. So when you're lodging the 2026 tax return next year, you would need to elect that relief, and you would get that relief again if your revenue's under 3 million dirham. If, however, we're lucky enough and authorities extend it, then it may move forward again. We don't know yet.
Do you think that's something that might happen? Do you think people are not maybe in gear by December the 31st?
I think this was a way to sort of ease people into it a bit more. So I think this might be one of those, everyone's had a good run. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. No, that's reasonable. But I mean, it's important to get the habit, I think, almost, of understanding the importance of accurate profit reporting, accurate record taking. We'll get into that as well. And the importance of strategic planning, I suppose. I mean, there's a big conversation now about the Small Business Relief Scheme, lifesaver for many, clock's ticking. If there is an extension, that's fine. But the point is to get into the habit to make sure you are sorted in advance of December the 31st, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for a lot of people, we've got September 30 coming up, and that will be when their next tax return for last year will be due.
Right.
So 9 months after the year end. So a lot of people should have been keeping good records throughout the year last year, meaning this is just a tick box exercise. Yeah. I think I mentioned to you before, my sister was very much a shoebox accountant. So she would get me to do her tax returns over the years, turn up with a shoebox of receipts at the end of the year and say, over to you.
And you'd say, thanks a bunch.
Absolutely. That's exactly how I worded it.
Yeah.
But with things like your quarterly VAT returns being due and lodgeable throughout the year, people can't do that anymore. You'll get caught out, you'll get fines if you're late on your VAT returns and etc. So people need to be up to date, and it's no use cramming it in at the end of every quarter because you can miss things, make mistakes, etc. So if they're in the regular routine of preferably say once a week, try and get your accounts up to date, reconciliations done, at the end of the quarter, it's just another week. It's an easy task.
Yeah.
And then when it comes tax time, you've already done it. So it's all finished.
Yeah.
When you leave those things and they just grow and you start worrying about it, so you ignore it a bit more and you lose a bit more sleep, that's when you run into problems.
Yeah, this is when you don't want to be head in sand. So if an SME, anybody, but I look at this from an SME perspective, really. If you're currently using SBR, as it were, what do you need to be doing now to prepare for 2027, other than getting rid of the shoebox kind of thing? Because that relief might well disappear.
Oh, absolutely. And more than likely, it will not continue forever. Probably next year, my personal opinion, I think that's when it'll finish up. You need to just get into that regular routine of keeping your accounts. So, and preferably not on Excel. That's not the world's best accounting system. So something simple like a QuickBooks or a Xero or something like this. They're quite cheap and cheerful, but for an SME, they're a simple tool that would be able to pick up and use if you're not outsourcing.
Okay, gotcha. It's not just corporate tax that we need to think about, is it? This the 9% figure. There's also VAT. So what do you need to know about VAT as an SME? What's the most important stuff?
So VAT, I think one thing that catches people out is the registration process. So when you initially set your company up, within 3 months you get your trade license, you must register for corporate tax. Doesn't happen automatically, you've got to go and do it.
Yep.
And we saw quite a few fines thrown around for people missing that deadline, which the FTA is now waiving at the moment. They've got a bit of an amnesty, which is great. The VAT is a different registration process. So you can manually opt in to register after 187,500 dirham turnover in a 12-month period, or after 365 you must register.
Right.
The problem is the onus is on the business owner to keep track of that and work out when they're going to tip over that 365 where the mandatory registration comes. And from that point, they've got 30 days to register. If they miss that point, if they forget about it and they end up with 500 or 600 income by the end of the year, they could end up with sort of like registration penalties, VAT that they should have charged clients, but they didn't. So that can then just start stacking up penalties. So it's important to really keep an eye on that month on month, especially if you're looking at winning a big project, because people could go from 50,000 dirham to 500 with one big project.
Sure. So if you're a freelancer, for example, and you are invoicing clients for work done, it's not, you don't have to register until you hit a certain point. But is it sensible to register anyway, looking to the future?
If you think you're going to tip over that 365, absolutely. Below the 187,500, you will have problems trying to register. I've seen a few get rejected where the FTA have said, you're not really there yet.
Not really worth it.
So
Right.
Come back when you are. But sometimes, as I say, somebody just snags a bigger contract or one bigger client, and that will jump them quite quickly from sort of well below to well above.
Gotcha.
And that's where I think it's probably more prudent to at least try and register so you would have a defensible position should anyone say, why didn't you register earlier? There's no real harm in registering earlier. There is harm in missing the deadline and registering late.
Okay. So, right, the mandatory VAT registration is 375,000 dirhams in taxable turnover. Is that right? Is it
365.
Is it 365?
Yep.
Okay. Beyond just hitting that number, what are the most common mistakes you see SMEs making during the registration process that lead to? Because the other side of this is you need to be aware that there are some fairly hefty penalties.
Sorry, it is 375.
Is it 375? Okay.
The biggest one is, as I said, missing that deadline of when you've hit that 375.
Okay.
So we had this issue back in 2018. We tried to register because we knew we were about to hit it, and we got our registration sort of turned back a few times. And then a few months later, we got told, oh, by the way, you should have been registered a few months ago because you are over that now. Now you owe us some VAT, you owe us VAT returns, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So we did have some issues there. So that's why it's insurance. For me, if you just try and keep track of it and you think you're going to get anywhere over that 187, then just get the application in.
Okay. And if you're unsure, there is a tax portal, Imara Tax. Is it the Imara Tax portal?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So you can verify stuff. E-invoicing, we've spent quite a lot of time talking about on this program. It's another recent change. The FTA is moving towards mandatory e-invoicing, right, for B2B transactions. At the moment. So for an SME owner used to Excel and manual spreadsheets for basic invoicing, what's the biggest kind of operational change they need to make to ensure they don't fall offside with the new requirements?
I guess getting one of the FTA approved softwares is the first thing.
Right.
So there's about half a dozen, I think, that have been approved by the FTA at the moment. And they will have to subscribe to that because those softwares are then linked to the FTA. So when you're raising an invoice, it actually is basically logged automatically.
Right.
So that by the start of next year, people will have to actually look at that, the SMEs, and get someone appointed.
Just outside looking in, I mean, that seems to me to be a situation where it may help a great deal with credit control.
Credit control?
In terms of chasing invoices, the fact that invoices are logged, the fact that there is a logged record there, and I wonder if that's. I mean, it seems to me that that's kind of a not a stick you can wag, but it is. It's pay me in 60 days. The credit cycle is 60 days. 60 days is 60 days.
Well, I think it will certainly help things to stop things slipping through the cracks with a lot of businesses. Because especially if you're a founder of an SME, you're obviously the marketing department, the accounting department, the BD department, and you're running around trying to do everything at once.
You're the coffee guy as well.
Yeah, and more than likely, yes, I've certainly been that too, and PRO, etc. But that will force people to get those invoices raised on time, etc. They're going to be registered, and then your own accounting system should remind you when they're due. You can follow them up. It will help with compliance with VAT. It means your corporate tax should be a lot cleaner because your VAT and your corporate tax now should line up. So ordinarily at the moment, one problem we have is if someone in a quarter gets their VAT return, lodges it. Next quarter, maybe they forgot to close their accounting system and they go back and make a change. There could be a problem now where their VAT return doesn't match what was lodged because they've amended something.
Yeah.
And a lot of the simpler accounting systems will have that option maybe as a standard where you can override. So at the end of the year, it's pretty easy for the FTA to look at your annual corporate tax return and then just add up your 4 quarters of VAT and say, hold on a minute, something doesn't match. So if people are not careful, these are the simple things that can trip you up that are going to cause you some issues down the line because you've lodged a VAT return and given a declaration saying that's it and I've paid my fees, and then your corporate tax should match. And if it doesn't, you've given the perfect ammunition to have a look and say, well, why doesn't it match? Because they should.
Okay. So, let's look a little bit more at some of the pitfalls. And I guess audit resilience. If there's a word that fits tax, resilience is the word as far as I'm concerned. I know we overuse it. And I want to kind of tap your depth of experience. You're a former Deloitte Siemens guy. You've seen plenty of SMEs, I'm sure, go through audits. What are the things that catch people out the most? Is it bad record keeping, the shoebox kind of thing? Is it just fundamentally misunderstanding the rules? Because one of the things with tax, as far as I'm concerned, is, and this I think leads to the fear, is there's a lot to get to grips with to understand.
I think sometimes people, avoid some of the advice they probably need up front. So probably a little bit more advice from an advisor, an accountant, tax advisor, just to give a bit of guidance of, okay, I understand your business, make sure you're invoicing like this. This is how a compliant tax invoice looks. This is when you apply VAT. I think that would help because sometimes people try and save a little bit on the front, and the fines for getting that wrong repeatedly will far outweigh that little bit of advice.
Yeah.
I think there's that. The second part is sometimes we see SME owners confusing, sometimes if it's a first time in business, they confuse revenue with profit, and sometimes they treat the company a little bit like a piggy bank, and they shouldn't be mixing up their personal things with the business because that's where it gets very messy. when you're trying to separate those two, because obviously you can't just stick all your groceries through your business and get tax deductions for them. You won't claim the VAT. So then if you start putting all that stuff in there, it is very challenging for someone to try and figure out which is which, you know, and that can be problematic. And I saw this several years ago. We had a young guy, he had a marketing company, and he'd gone from nothing to about 100 and something employees very quickly, and he was making millions. And this guy was doing really well. But he succumbed to I've got a lot of cash. He didn't look at the profit line. And he was coming to Dubai and he was renting supercars, he was renting private jets with his mates, he was showing me the pictures, and I said, that looks and sounds great, but if I were you, I would just calm down a little bit on the spend, because you know you're making money, but not that much. Yeah. And sure enough, he unfortunately went bust, because he didn't see the difference between that revenue and and his cash flow versus what his actual profit was. So I think that's a trap that people. I'm the other way. I'm terrified of overspending, so I'm like a little squirrel hiding things away. But that's the sort of the risks that people who are exposed to sort of larger amounts of cash quite quickly can succumb to if they're not careful.
It's interesting that as soon as you said private jets and supercars, it was almost as though the alarm bells went off around each ear in my head. But I guess if things happen quickly and you start doing well, and you're making money, you want to spend some money, you want to enjoy it. You can see why it happens, but it is a trap. Yeah,
and I think, unfortunately, that the young guy, he was surrounding himself with people who were enjoying that, so they weren't there, sort of to try and give him a little bit of wiser counsel to sort of say, hey, maybe we should be a little bit more responsible with our spend. So, that can be a bit challenging for some people.
Yeah. I suppose the way to look at your sort of tax responsibility is compliance isn't admin, is it? Compliance is potentially competitive advantage. It's probably risk management as well. It needs to kind of be reframed, compliance, I think, to an extent.
I think it's part and parcel of running a business. No business is successful with one facet. It could be a great marketing company or AI company, whatever it might be. But if it doesn't have all of that back office in place, it will not succeed. It needs to have its salaries paid on time. Yeah. It needs to be compliant with its bank, so its bank doesn't get frozen. So there's all these little things, and tax is just another piece of that puzzle that people need to make sure that they pay attention to. And as you say, it shouldn't be looked upon as a chore. If your taxes are being recorded correctly, that means your accounting's done correctly, meaning hopefully, but that means your monthly accounts are correct. Yeah. And you can look at those and say, hey, I understand my business position, we're making money, losing money, and make sensible decisions based on that. So it's one ecosystem where you can't ignore any one part of it.
So really good tax habits are routine, not receipts in the shoebox. We keep having to go at your sister this morning for some reason. I don't know why that is. But it's about records. It's about having systems. So if you're audit ready, as you say, it seems like that's the best advice, being audit ready, because you're on top of financial affairs, you're on top of your cash flow, you're collecting, your credit is under control. Plus, that sort of stress of the FTA deadline that's on your shoulders, it's a lot lighter.
Oh, absolutely. And as I say, if you've kept up to date doing your quarterly VAT returns, your tax return that's due in a few months will be a walk in the park, because a few year-end adjustments, maybe if you want an audit, get an audit done, and then it's just fill in the tax return and away you go. Yeah. Rather than the big stress of, oh my goodness, now I have to try and get on top of all of this.
Yeah. So get the habit. The FTA is moving towards a continuous visibility this year, right? I got to be honest. What on earth does that mean? What does it mean for a business owner? But does that mean we're moving away from the sort of a file and forget model?
No, I think the FTA is moving a lot more. They're obviously getting more sophisticated. So VAT has been implemented for a number of years now. So the enforcement part of VAT is, I think, a little bit more routine. I think they've really got the right auditors. They've got in a good routine of flagging those accounts they're wanting to look at. So the FTA is looking at I guess, a little bit more closely on the corporate tax returns because they're a little bit newer. But when you say, sort of being audit ready, etc., I think it's important for people to realise that if you've got your VAT returns done on time and you're comfortable, someone's checked them, then your corporate tax should flow easily, meaning you're constantly, as you say, audit ready.
Right.
Everything's up to date. You're not going to be falling behind on things. And it's when one of those things slip that it has a knock-on effect everywhere. If you struggled, you might start getting fines. You might, God forbid, you have an issue with renewing your trade license or your bank account. Right. One problem can lead to another. So it's far better to be proactive and keep everything up to date.
When you talk to clients, and my guess is, you're talking to people who are on occasion overwhelmed, they're nervous, that might be a little bit frantic. Usually there are things to deal with here that maybe they don't fully understand. Because you go into business with the best of intentions, don't you? You're doing things to, further a career, to start something, to offer something, to offer employment, and you've got a great product, a great idea. If you've got somebody who's a little bit overwhelmed, what's your advice of where you start, apart from at the beginning? Is there like a first step to becoming, tax healthy?
I think, so what we do when we onboard a new client, we have a quarterly webinar where we give some basic advice to new general managers, because often, if it's an SME, they'll be general manager, shareholder, etc.
Right.
And what we'll do in that is run through some of the basic compliance issues that they will face, and some basic lodgements that they'll be responsible for, and some of their legal obligations. And I think for everyone, they should try and at least find a way to get a handle on that early days. As soon as they're looking at getting a license or they've got a license, it's important they understand what obligations come along with that.
Right.
Because, even something like, some people don't realise that their accountant won't automatically register them for tax. Some people don't realise that if you get a visa, you need to come back once every 6 months. Maybe you're out of the country and you need that. Otherwise, your visa will get cancelled, and then you won't have a visa for your bank account. Therefore, you'll have a problem with your bank account, and it can have a knock-on effect. So there are a lot of little nuances to doing business here that people need to understand, but understanding those early in the piece rather than when one's already a problem, because that can lead to the next problem and the next problem.
What about in terms of records? How long do you have to keep records?
So it's a little strange. VAT is 5 years, so we've got to keep those records for.
Okay.
But corporate tax is 7.
Okay.
So the prudent would be keep them.
Yeah. Okay. Don't chuck out the lever arch files.
No.
And keep them for at least 7 years.
Yes.
Final question. I've got a feeling I know what your answer is going to be. Not wanting to second guess anything, but the UAE still a competitive place to do business despite the extra compliance we've got?
I think it's probably one of the most competitive in the market at the moment. We see, I guess, the government is able to put out initiatives quite quickly and quite reactive to the market trends. And they're able to try and do things to attract business quickly. And if we're looking at tax perspective, obviously it's very competitive. The ease of business, it's getting a lot easier to do business here. Gone are the days of a PRO running around with an armful of folders to set up companies and the like.
The good old days.
Yeah, the good old days. But I think from a competitive standpoint, I think the UAE still has a lot to offer people, and compared to the market conditions in other countries, I think the market's still quite vibrant here. So we're still bullish on the market and the region as a whole.
It's been good to talk to you. I appreciate it. It's amazing how much this needs to be reinforced, and will continue to need to be reinforced, of course, as well. But we'll have to get you back in. There's a lot more to discuss. Scott Cairns is the Managing Director, the founder of Creation Business Consultants, based here in Dubai. Good to talk to you.
Thanks very much for having me.
Appreciate it. This full interview will be on our YouTube page after the show. There'll also be some useful clips on Instagram too. Just look for Mira Business FM.
Mira Business FM, Dubai's home of business radio.